Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. A low drum beat echoed across the lakeshore, pulsing like a restless heartbeat against the soft hush of twilight. Paper lanterns bobbed in the breeze, their warm glow reflecting on the rippling water. And there, just beyond the reach of flickering firelight, Wesley found himself holding his breath. He stood at the edge of the makeshift dance floor, half in shadow, acutely aware of the tension collecting in his gut. Dozens of people mingled around him, neighbors, distant relatives, curious visitors, yet his eyes locked on a single scene. Abby, his wife, was dancing with Xavier. Their bodies moved closer than mere acquaintances, and the music's rhythm seemed to encourage that uncomfortably intimate sway. It was a midsummer gathering unlike any he'd experienced before. Summer nights here usually meant celebration, laughter, and families crowding around bonfires. Tonight, however, felt charged with unspoken rivalry. The sliver of a moon hung overhead, but the sky was still streaked with an indigo glow that refused to give way to darkness. The aroma of grilled corn and roasting sausages floated on the air. Lively chatter occasionally spiked into roars of laughter around the kegs of craft beer. By all appearances, this should have been a festive, carefree evening. But the sharp look on Aurora's face, Abby's mother, told a different story. She stood a few yards away, clad in a sleek emerald green dress that shimmered every time she glanced at the dancers. Her arms folded like a critical judge, Aurora watched Abby and Xavier twirl to the upbeat music. When she noticed Wesley watching from the sidelines, her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. It was as if she'd choreographed the entire performance. Wesley clenched his fists. He could practically hear Aurora's voice in his head, belittling him, mocking his career, pointing out that he wasn't sophisticated enough or wealthy enough for her precious daughter. Memories surfaced. All the backhanded remarks about his dirty, manual labor in geothermal drilling. All the time she'd said Abby deserved someone polished, someone like Xavier. A cold prickle spread across Wesley's spine as he recalled their latest argument just before the party. "You can never provide the life Abby really needs," Aurora had hissed at him. His jaw tightened. If only Abby had defended him. But Abby stayed quiet, too easily swayed by her mother's scorn. Now his wife's laughter reached him over the revelers, soft, familiar, yet tinged with a flirtatious ring that made his chest tighten. Abby looked radiant under the lanterns, wearing a flowing white sundress with embroidered flowers around the neckline. She was beautiful, no denying that, but something about the way she leaned toward Xavier's ear felt like a betrayal, an insult to the marriage vows they'd spoken not so many years ago. Across the way, a small cluster of families gathered near a table of refreshments. Wesley saw a flash of a familiar profile and blinked. Jessica, his ex-fiancée, was standing there, looking like she'd stepped out of an old photograph. She wore a simple floral blouse and a pair of jeans, holding the hand of a little girl around 5 or 6. The child had bright eyes and a mischievous grin, tugging Jessica toward a jar of candy. For an instant, Jessica lifted her gaze and met Wesley's. Time slowed. A swirl of old emotions churned up in his mind. Regret, nostalgia, maybe longing. Everything else, the chatter, the music, the flickering lights faded into the background. He was suddenly aware that Abby had spotted him staring. Worse, Aurora had too. A prick of guilt jabbed him. Why am I distracted by Jessica right now? But that guilt quickly turned to simmering anger. He took a step back, away from the dance area, away from Aurora's triumphant smirk. When Abby and Xavier finally broke apart, Abby's cheeks were flushed, her breath unsteady from dancing. She looked toward Wesley but hesitated as though unsure how to approach him. Aurora, meanwhile, strode confidently over to Wesley. "I see you've chosen to sit out this year," she remarked, her tone dripping with condescension. "Some men aren't cut out for these social events, are they?" Wesley forced a stiff smile. "I came to spend time with my wife," he replied tersely, "not watch her dance with someone else all night." Aurora let out a soft laugh, stepping closer. Xavier is only trying to help Abby have a good time, she said, putting just enough emphasis on Xavier to make Wesley grit his teeth. He's going to do big things in life. The subtext was unmistakable, unlike you, Wesley. He felt anger flare, but he tried to keep his voice calm. Maybe I should find my wife, he said pointedly, turning to leave. That was when Abby approached, her gaze darting between her mother and her husband. Wesley, she began. I don't know, can we all keep it civil? Aurora answered for him. You know, Abby, if you're unhappy, you have choices. You can choose a better path, one that someone like Xavier could offer. The threat was bold. Nearby guests, overhearing, awkwardly sidled away. Wesley's face burned. A hush settled on the small circle around them. He realized any response he made would be heard by half a dozen bystanders. He scowled and shook his head, turning on his heel. He refused to subject himself to more humiliation. He'd rather deal with the tension back at home. Without another word, he strode away from the bonfire's glow, past the startled expressions of partygoers, ignoring the worried call of Abby's voice behind him. As he walked down the torch-lined path, the beat of the music thumping at his back, he couldn't help glancing over once more toward Jessica. Their eyes met again. She hesitated as if she might come over and say something, apologize for the way things ended, or maybe just offer a friendly hello. But Wesley simply shook his head, forcing a polite nod before pushing through the crowd. Once he reached the parking area, he exhaled shakily. The sky was still tinged with pinkish light, that persistent midsummer glow. He climbed into his truck, feeling like he was suffocating under Aurora's scorn, under Abby's uncertainty, under the memory of Jessica's gaze. The engine roared to life, and he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. That single heated thought pounded in his mind. I won't let them make a fool of me again. I won't be humiliated like this anymore. Then he drove off, leaving behind the glowing lanterns and the echoes of laughter, wondering if he'd ever find peace again. Wesley's truck rumbled along a narrow road flanked by dark pine trees. He rolled his window down, letting the cool night air sweep through the cab in sharp, bracing currents. Anything to drown out the memories of the festival. By the time he reached home, a modest ranch-style house set back from the main road, it was nearly midnight. The porch light flickered, casting an unsettling halo on the gravel driveway. Slamming the door behind him, Wesley strode inside. The living room smelled faintly of Abby's perfume, a soft floral scent that usually warmed his heart. Tonight, it only churned his frustration. He tossed his keys onto the kitchen counter, letting them clatter. Minutes later, headlights cut across the window, and Abby's sedan pulled in. Wesley stood in the dimly lit living room, arms crossed, waiting. When she stepped inside, she spotted him immediately, his tense posture like a storm cloud hovering in the center of the room. "Wes, hey," she offered, her tone uncertain. She still wore the white sundress from earlier, now slightly wrinkled. "I'm sorry it ended that way. Mom was—" "Your mother's always the same," Wesley snapped, voice low. "But you, Abby, you could have stood up for me when she started belittling me, talking like I'm worthless. Instead, you just let her go on." Abby looked away. She was trying to humiliate me," Wesley cut in. "And I can't believe you let Xavier get so handsy out there. Do you realize how it looked?" Abby's cheeks flushed, anger flickering behind her eyes. "Wesley, you're overreacting. We were dancing. It's a festival, for crying out loud. Everyone was dancing." "Not like that," he retorted. "You were practically in his arms. Don't you care that it made me look like a fool?" Abby inhaled, shoulders trembling. "Please lower your voice. The last thing we need is to wake the kids." Their 5-year-old son, Dylan, was likely asleep down the hall, though he'd spent part of the evening with a babysitter. Abby tried to take a step closer, but Wesley backed away. "Fine," he hissed, quieter but still seething. "Care to explain why your mother has suddenly decided Xavier's the best man on the planet? Or is that part of her scheme to get you to leave me?" Abby rubbed her temples. "You know how Mom is. She's always critical. She's always got these plans. It doesn't mean I agree with her." She paused, searching his gaze. "You're reading way too much into tonight. It was just a dance." Wesley wanted to believe her. wanted to trust that it was harmless. But the last few months had felt like one long slide into cold distance. Before he could respond, though, a faint chime sounded from the kitchen counter, Abby's phone lighting up. She glanced over, tension clouding her features. Wesley moved faster, scooping the phone up, an uneasy curiosity compelling him. One new message preview glowed on the screen. "Tomorrow, let's meet again. Keep this between us. X." He felt his stomach drop. The message was short, but the implications were jarring. "X," he murmured. "Xavier." He spun around to face Abby, heart pounding. "You want to tell me what this is?" he demanded, holding the phone in front of her. She snatched it away, cheeks turning crimson. It's not what you think. He just wants to talk about a project." Her words spilled out in a rush. "He's got potential investors and he thinks I can help, that's all." Wesley's glare hardened. "Oh, so investors text you at midnight telling you to keep things secret?" I don't know. He's dramatic. You know that," Abby said, stumbling over her explanation. "Mom introduced us. He thinks I'm crucial for bridging contacts. We're trying to save the family print shop. This is business." A hollow ache filled Wesley's chest. "Business? Right." The phone message flickered across his mind again. "Keep this between us." "And you've never mentioned any of this before?" he challenged. Abby's eyes glistened. "Because I knew how you'd react. You hate Mom's involvement in everything, and I can't even talk about Xavier without you accusing me. I swear, it's harmless." "That's not how it looked tonight," Wesley said coldly. "You know, Abby, your mother spent years telling you I'm not good enough. Maybe she's finally convinced you. If that's the case, just say it. I won't stick around if you've already made up your mind." Abby shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "Don't twist this around. I'm trying to hold everything together. The shop is drowning in debt. Mom's at my throat every day, complaining that you haven't invested a dime to help. And I'm stuck in the middle." Wesley exhaled, feeling the fight drain from him momentarily. "I get it. Times are tough. But lying or letting Xavier treat you like that, it's not okay." A heavy silence settled, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Abby swiped at her eyes. "Look, I'm sorry if tonight upset you, but I can't keep fighting about the same thing." She started past him toward the hallway. He reached out, stopping her gently by the arm. "If this keeps up, if your mother keeps dragging you away from me, or if Xavier's in the picture more than he should be, I'm telling you now, Abby, I'm done. I can't live like a second-class citizen in my own marriage." She searched his face, tears shimmering. "Don't say that," she whispered. "You don't mean it." His eyes stung with frustration. "I do mean it." He let go of her arm and stepped back. "I won't be disrespected or humiliated." Abby whispered his name, her voice trembling with pain, but Wesley turned away. He marched toward the bedroom, each footstep echoing his anger. The last thing he heard before shutting the door was a quiet sob from behind him. Sunrise found Wesley sitting on the front porch steps, elbows braced on his knees. A faint pink glow lit the horizon, and the early morning mist drifted across the yard. His eyes felt gritty from lack of sleep. He'd spent half the night replaying every bitter moment, every stinging word from Aurora, every flicker of unease regarding Abby and Xavier. He sipped coffee that had turned lukewarm. Birds called out from the pines, their songs strangely comforting against the quiet that hung over the house. It was a new day, but the heaviness hadn't lifted from his chest. He recalled meeting Abby years ago, one impulsive weekend of passion when he and Jessica were on a harsh break. Jessica had gone to attend a family wedding without him, and he'd been simmering with resentment. Then Abby crossed his path at a mutual friends party, her shy smile and gentle nature drawing him in. One thing led to another, and that casual fling changed everything. Abby discovered she was pregnant months later, and Wesley, determined not to abandon his responsibilities, married her despite the whirlwind of it all. He closed his eyes, letting the memory roll in like a bitter wave. He'd been engaged to Jessica, his first true love, until miscommunication and pride tore them apart. A small pang of guilt twisted inside him. "I hurt Jessica," he thought. He'd tried calling her after, tried to explain, but by then she'd moved on, or so he assumed. Actually seeing her again last night brought back an ache he couldn't name. Wesley exhaled. Focus on the present. He had a wife now, a child. Dylan was everything to him. He loved Abby, truly, but Aurora's ceaseless interference had chipped away at that love. Aurora claimed Wesley had trapped Abby in an inconvenient marriage. Aurora never believed he'd stick around to be a proper husband or father. Yet he did, building a small but growing geothermal drilling business. Now, after years of slow progress, he finally saw a path to expand. Contracts for eco-friendly heating solutions were booming, and he wanted to seize the momentum. But Aurora scoffed at his ambitions. She viewed it as blue-collar work beneath her family's supposed status. A moment later, the screen door creaked behind him. Abby stepped out, hair still damp from a hurried shower, face pale. She wore a simple t-shirt and jeans, hugging her torso as though bracing against the tension. "Morning," she said softly. Wesley nodded without looking up. "Morning." They sat in silence for a few seconds. The yard glittered with dew, and the air smelled of fresh grass. Abby rubbed her hands together, anxious. "I'm heading to the print shop in an hour. Mom wants me there for some financial review." He pressed his lips together. "Right. Do what you need to do." Abby sighed. "Look, about last night I really am sorry. I don't want us fighting." Wesley watched a squirrel dart across the driveway before returning his gaze to her. "You know how I feel? Aurora's in your ear every second, and now Xavier's part of the picture. It's too much." She nodded, tears welling again. "You have every right to be upset, but I swear I'm not. I'm not trying to hurt you, or cheat on you. I'm just stuck." The words "not trying to hurt you" lodged in his mind, but he couldn't help notice she'd avoided claiming absolute innocence regarding Xavier. The phone message from last night still cast a shadow over them. He rose, pushing off his knees. "I hope you're telling the truth, because if you aren't, I'll find out eventually." His tone was more resigned than threatening. Abby took a shaky breath, then stood as well. "I should go get Dylan ready for daycare." "Sure," Wesley said quietly. When she disappeared back inside, he released a long, tense exhale. "We can't keep going like this," he thought. Glancing at his phone, he wondered if he should call Jessica, apologize for leaving abruptly last night, maybe see how she was doing. But that felt like stepping into dangerous territory. Another wave of guilt hit him. Jessica was part of a chapter he'd tried to close. Still, the sight of her at the festival had stirred old feelings he couldn't ignore. His phone buzzed, drawing him from his reverie. It was a text from a prospective client, wanting a quote for a new drilling project. A small spark of hope flared in Wesley's chest. If the business flourishes, maybe I can show everyone, Aurora, Xavier, even Abby, that I'm no failure. With new success might come the respect he'd always wanted. He squared his shoulders, resolving to reach out to a few more leads today. But as he headed into the house, the tension remained. He couldn't simply outwork Betrayal if that's what lurked behind Abby's secret text messages. That nagging doubt weighed heavily, refusing to let him breathe easy. That evening, the lingering summer twilight cast long shadows across the living room as Wesley tidied up. Abby had stayed late at the print shop. At least, that was her explanation by text. Wesley tried to distract himself by cooking dinner for Dylan, a simple mac and cheese with steamed vegetables. The quiet in the house felt oppressive, a reminder that his marriage was teetering on a razor's edge. Then, just as he finished putting the dishes away, he heard an unexpected knock at the door. The knock was brisk, insistent. Dylan, busy with a puzzle in the corner, looked up curiously. Wesley frowned, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He opened the door to find Aurora standing on the porch, wearing a tailored navy blazer and skirt, her lipstick a deep, intimidating red. Right behind her stood Xavier, with his slick smile and a folder tucked under one arm. "Evening," Aurora said coolly, stepping forward as though she owned the place. She didn't bother to wait for an invitation. Xavier offered a tight nod, trailing behind her. Wesley's jaw tensed. "Where's Abby?" he asked, scanning the driveway and seeing no sign of her sedan. Aurora brushed past him. "She's driving separately. I wanted to talk to her about some new project proposals, and I thought we could all sit down like mature adults." Her voice held a condescending note on the word mature. Wesley followed them into the living room, crossing his arms. "You don't get to just waltz in here unannounced, Aurora." Xavier looked around with polite curiosity, as if examining his surroundings. "Nice place, Wesley," he remarked, though the forced civility couldn't mask the tension in his eyes. Aurora, on the other hand, pressed her thin lips together, glaring at the modest decor with subtle contempt. Dylan rose from the couch, eyeing the visitors warily. "Oh, Dylan," Aurora cooed, switching gears. "Run along to your room, sweetie. Grown-ups need to talk." Her tone was sugary, but the dismissal was clear. Wesley cleared his throat, gently guiding Dylan down the hall. "Watch your show, buddy. I'll be there in a minute, okay?" Dylan nodded, scurrying off. Once the boy was out of earshot, Wesley turned back to Aurora and Xavier. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Aurora set her purse down on a side table. "I'm here to discuss Abby's future. My daughter has potential, and I won't see it wasted. Xavier believes she could be instrumental in securing new investments for our company. She has contacts. She has charm." Aurora glanced around as if searching for the right words. Certainly more than you could ever offer her. Wesley's pulse quickened. "This is my home, Aurora. Don't waltz in here insulting me. As for Abby, if she wants to talk about some project, she can talk to me directly." Xavier raised a placating hand. "Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. Abby and I are handling a potential deal this weekend. We planned on meeting at Aurora's place for strategy sessions, just a short retreat." He offered what he probably considered a sympathetic smile. "No offense, man, but Abby's worried you'd never agree." Wesley clenched his fists at his sides. "She was right about that. So let me guess. You're both here to strong-arm her into going?" Aurora let out a sharp laugh. "No one's strong-arming anyone. Abby is an adult. She can make her own decisions." Her gaze flicked over him with disdain. "And you seem threatened by the fact that she's got options." A flash of anger burned in Wesley's eyes. He took a step forward. "The only option I see is you meddling in our marriage. If Abby's truly interested in working with you, she can discuss it with me. Not like this." Just then, the front door opened again, revealing Abby. She stood hesitantly on the threshold, her face reflecting equal parts dread and guilt. "Mom? Xavier? You're already here?" She shot Wesley an apologetic look. Aurora wasted no time. "We were just bringing Xavier's proposal by for you to review. I told him we should do it privately so you can make the choice that benefits you the most." Wesley let out a harsh breath. "Choice?" He locked eyes with Abby. "Are you actually considering going off with them this weekend?" Abby wavered, twisting her fingers anxiously. I don't know. I mean, it might help the shop. It might help me figure things out." "See?" Aurora said pointedly. "Abby wants to explore all options for her future. She's wasted enough time." Wesley's gaze snapped to Aurora. "Don't talk about our marriage like it's a waste." But Abby's posture sagged. "Could you let me think?" She looked at Wesley, voice trembling. "Just a chance to see if Xavier's ideas hold any weight. It's purely business." His heart sank. "And what am I supposed to do? Smile and nod while you run off with him?" Aurora's face lit with triumph, but Abby seemed conflicted. "I won't be gone long. Maybe just a night or two." Xavier offered a mild shrug, though the gleam in his eyes was anything but innocent. "I'll keep everything professional, Wesley. You have my word." Wesley bit back a retort, focusing instead on Abby. He wanted to shout, "This is a terrible idea," or "Don't you see how manipulative they're being?" But he also saw the exhaustion in her features. She was tired of the fights, tired of her mother's constant pushing. Still, it hurt that she couldn't just say no. "All right," he finally muttered, his voice hollow. "If that's what you want." Abby nodded, relief and regret warring in her expression. Aurora smirked, pivoting on her heel and patted Xavier's shoulder. "We'll see you soon, dear," she told Abby, picking up her purse. Xavier turned to Wesley. "Thanks for being understanding, man," he said in a tone that made Wesley's stomach twist. Then he followed Aurora to the door. A chilly silence wrapped itself around the living room once the door closed behind them. Abby sank onto the couch, face buried in her hands. Wesley stared at her for a moment, heart pounding. "It's like she's slipping through my fingers," he thought, "and I can't stop it." After a moment, he stepped into the hall, retrieving his phone from a side table. Scrolling through his contacts, he found Damien's number. Damien was an old friend from high school, now a practicing attorney. He pressed dial, heart thudding. It was late, but Wesley needed advice, maybe even protection against what he sensed was coming. When Damien's groggy voice answered, Wesley spoke in a tight whisper. "Hey, sorry to bother you, man, but I need your help. It's about Abby, about everything." He cast one last look at Abby, hunched on the couch. "If Aurora wants to tear my family apart, she's going to find out I won't go down without a fight." Wesley woke up the following morning with a heaviness in his chest that felt like thick fog blanketing a lonely highway. He tried to shake it off by immersing himself in work calls and scheduling upcoming drilling projects. Yet no matter how busy he kept himself, images from the previous night pulsed in his mind: Aurora's smug grin, Abby's bowed head, Xavier's silent confidence. By mid-afternoon, he needed fresh air more than anything. He decided to stop by the local park after dropping off a few contract papers at the post office. The late summer sun streamed through leafy branches, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of cut grass. As Wesley strolled along a winding path, he spotted a figure that made him slow his steps. Jessica. She was kneeling on the grass, helping a little girl, her daughter, Brittany, tie a shoelace. The girl's giggles rang out as she tried balancing on one foot, arms flailing for dramatic effect. Wesley felt an uneasy warmth rise in his chest. He hadn't expected to see Jessica again so soon. A fleeting thought urged him to turn around and avoid the chance encounter, but Brittany spotted him first. Wide-eyed curiosity lit up her face, and she tugged at Jessica's sleeve, pointing. Jessica glanced over her shoulder. Their eyes met hers, carried a flicker of both surprise and guardedness. "Wesley?" she said softly, standing up. He approached, forcing a casual smile. "Hey, Jessica. Didn't think I'd run into you again so soon?" He shifted his gaze to Brittany, who was peeking from behind her mom. "Hi there, Brittany." The little girl offered a bashful wave. She wore a bright pink shirt, decorated with cartoon mermaids, and her hair was pulled into two uneven pigtails, as though she or Jessica had rushed the styling. Jessica placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder. "This is my friend Wesley," she explained. Then, looking at him, she added, "We moved back into town a few weeks ago, still settling in." Wesley swallowed. "I remember you mentioned that at the festival. How's that going?" Jessica raised a shoulder in a slight shrug. "It's an adjustment, but it's good to be closer to my folks. They help out with Brittany." Her tone softened. "You, seemed upset at the festival. I mean, you left pretty abruptly." He considered lying, saying everything was fine, but he saw genuine concern in Jessica's gaze, reminiscent of the empathy she used to show him long ago. "It's complicated," he finally said. "Aurora was on a mission to embarrass me, as usual. Abby didn't stop her." Jessica studied him for a moment, then gestured to a bench under a spreading oak tree. "Why don't we sit for a bit? Brittany can keep playing with that big patch of daisies." Brittany, already bored with adult talk, headed off to pick wildflowers. Wesley and Jessica settled onto the bench. He noticed she wore simple clothes, a pale yellow blouse and denim capris. Nothing fancy, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity. "So do you want to talk about it?" Jessica asked, voice low. "I know it's not my business, but you looked hurt that night." Wesley inhaled, contemplating how much to reveal. He stared out at the park's pond, where a few ducks paddled serenely. "Aurora's never approved of me. She's pushing Abby in another direction, some new project with a guy named Xavier." His throat tightened just mentioning the name. "He's clearly cozying up to Abby. I suspect it's more than business." Jessica's expression flickered with something sympathy, perhaps. Or maybe it was a memory of her own heartbreak. Does Abby feel the same, or is she just under Aurora's thumb? "I wish I knew," Wesley admitted. "She claims it's all about saving the family print shop, but she's not shutting him down even when he crosses lines." Jessica nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. That sounds tough. You two have a child, right? Dylan?" "Yeah, he's 5. A faint smile tugged at Wesley's lips. "I'd do anything for him. That's why I can't just walk away. I keep hoping Abby will realize what she's risking." Jessica smoothed a stray hair behind her ear. "I remember how stubborn you can be when you set your mind on something." She paused, a flicker of old affection in her eyes. "Sometimes that's good, but just be careful. If Abby's not fighting for you, you need to figure out how much you're willing to endure. He swallowed the lump in his throat. Funny. You used to say I was loyal to a fault. Guess I never changed that. Jessica gave a wistful smile. We all have a few qualities we can't shake. A small voice interrupted them. Mom, look what I found. Brittany came over with a handful of daisies. She thrust them toward Jessica, then shyly offered one to Wesley. He accepted the flower, touched by the child's gesture. Thank you, Brittany, he said gently. She grinned. We're going to put these in water at home, right, Mom? Jessica laughed softly. Right. An ease fell over them, though a bittersweet undercurrent lingered. Wesley remembered how he and Jessica once dreamed of a simple life, maybe a house near a quiet lake, a couple of kids, and weekend road trips. Those plans had shattered in the chaos of misunderstandings. Now here they were, two people with separate lives, talking like old friends or near strangers. They chatted a bit longer, Jessica mentioning how she'd gotten a part-time job at a local boutique while searching for something more stable. Wesley shared a little about his geothermal business, the potential expansion, and the stress of dealing with Aurora's snobbery. Before long, Brittany grew restless, insisting she was hungry. I told her we'd go grab a snack, Jessica explained. She hesitated, then looked at Wesley. We could grab a coffee sometime if you want. Just talk, maybe? Wesley felt an odd flutter in his chest. I'd like that, he replied quietly. I appreciate you listening. She gave him a small, sincere smile. Take care of yourself, okay? She turned, guiding Brittany away. Wesley watched them depart, a mixture of comfort and confusion swirling inside him. It's so easy talking to her, he realized. Yet guilt tugged at him for finding solace in Jessica's company when he and Abby were supposed to be working on their marriage. But the truth was, Abby wasn't there. She was tangled in Aurora's manipulations. And as he headed back to his truck, Wesley couldn't deny that a part of him longed for the kind of genuine connection he'd just experienced on that park bench. Abby hunched over a cluttered desk inside the aging print shop that Aurora had inherited decades ago. Faded posters of old printing ads adorned the walls, their edges curling like paper corners left too long in the sun. The once thriving business now struggled under mounting debts and outdated equipment. The air reeked of ink and desperation. Her head throbbed. She'd been staring at columns of numbers on a spreadsheet for hours, trying to figure out where they could cut costs without shutting down entirely. Aurora's angry voice drifted in from the next room, presumably berating a supplier on the phone. With a sigh, Abby shifted her gaze to the half-eaten sandwich sitting on a wrapper near her keyboard. She had no appetite. Ever since that blowout argument with Wesley, her stomach had been tied in knots. Guilt gnawed at her for letting her mother walk all over him in public. Yet she felt cornered. If the shop went under, Aurora would blame Abby for not connecting with the right people. Xavier stepped inside, his footsteps soft against the worn linoleum. He wore a slim-fit suit, dark gray with a crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough to hint at arrogance. Hey, he said, flashing a smile meant to be disarming. Thought you could use a break. I brought coffee. Abby forced a polite nod. Thanks. She accepted the paper cup, realizing how exhausted she must look. I'm still comparing last quarter's expenses. There's a ton of overdue bills. Yeah, Aurora gave me a rundown, Xavier said, leaning a hip against the desk. He sipped his own coffee, then added, I have a few contacts who might be open to investing, but you know it comes with conditions. They'll need to see a new management approach. Meaning? Abby asked warily. He glanced around, lowering his voice. Meaning they'll want to see if you can break away from any dead weight. People who aren't fully committed to making this place grow. We have to show them that you're serious, that you have the freedom to make decisions. Abby caught the insinuation. Are you talking about Wesley? She said, voice taut. Xavier shrugged, swirling his coffee. Look, I don't know your personal situation. But from an outsider's perspective, Aurora's told me he's not exactly supportive. Investors might worry about a potential conflict of interest, like if Wesley tries to pull you away or drain resources for his own projects. A flicker of anger sparked inside her. She hated how easily Aurora and Xavier spoke about Wesley, as if he was a roadblock instead of her husband. But she also felt the crushing anxiety of saving the business. "We've just hit a rough patch," she murmured. "Wesley's frustrated. Mom keeps provoking him." Xavier set down his coffee, his tone gentler. "I'm sure it's complicated, but if you want a real shot at saving the shop, I can't hide the fact that potential partners will probe into your personal life. They need someone 100% committed, no drama." Abby's eyes stung. "No drama? My marriage is on the brink." She sighed, pressing her fingers to her temple. "Is it always so black and white?" He offered a sympathetic smile. "Not always, but in business, people like clarity. They'll want to see that you're, how do I put this, unencumbered by toxic ties." "Toxic ties," she echoed bitterly, biting back the urge to defend Wesley. She pictured him drilling through tough layers of earth, building his business from the ground up. It wasn't fair for them to label him as a toxic presence. But the print shop was sliding into a financial abyss, and she felt trapped. Aurora appeared in the doorway, phone still in hand. "Xavier, we have that conference call in 5 minutes," she informed him, then looked at Abby. "And don't forget to finalize next month's payroll. If there even is a next month." Her snide tone was enough to curdle milk. Abby pursed her lips. "Yes, Mom, I know." Aurora departed as abruptly as she'd arrived. Xavier gave Abby a quick nod before leaving to handle the call. Once alone, she stared at the spreadsheet again, but the numbers blurred. For a moment, she imagined her life if she simply let go of the shop, walked away from Aurora's manipulative grip, and told Wesley she'd fight for their marriage. But that meant surrendering to guilt, letting Aurora call her a quitter. She shut her eyes, replaying how Xavier had danced with her at the festival, how she felt a certain thrill at being wanted, at being seen as useful, despite the guilt it stirred. Is it possible to fix my marriage and salvage this place? She wondered. Right now it felt like she was being asked to choose between them. The overhead lights flickered. The old wiring in the building was another sign of looming collapse. Sighing, Abby saved her work and stood, deciding she needed some air. Maybe if she could just take a short walk outside, her thoughts would untangle. As she headed out, Aurora's sharp voice drifted again from the next room. "Abby, I need you to stay late tonight. We're reconvening with Xavier after the call." Abby paused, glancing at the clock. "Stay late again? That means skipping dinner with Wesley and Dylan." Her heart sank. "Fine," she called back, her voice flat. She left the office and stepped onto the back loading dock, letting the warm evening air caress her face. She felt more trapped than ever, as though a chessboard had been laid out and Aurora plus Xavier were cornering her king. This has to change, Abby told herself. But how? Wesley arrived home that evening to an empty house. Dylan was still at daycare and Abby hadn't texted. He tried calling her cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Frustration gnawed at him. "She's working late with Aurora again, maybe with Xavier too," he thought grimly. He grabbed his keys and hurried to pick Dylan up, apologizing to the daycare staff for arriving on the brink of closing time. Dylan, clutching a drawing of a dinosaur, hopped into Wesley's truck. As they drove, Dylan chattered about some new puzzle they'd completed, oblivious to the tension in Wesley's jaw. At home, Wesley microwaved leftover spaghetti, setting a place for Dylan at the small kitchen table. The boy ate eagerly, unbothered by the simpler dinner, while Wesley picked at his own meal. "I shouldn't let this overshadow my time with Dylan," he reminded himself, trying to push back the negative thoughts. Around 8, the front door finally opened. Abby stepped in, shoulders slumped. She seemed startled to see father and son finishing up in the kitchen. "Hey," she said, forcing a small smile. "Long day at the shop." Dylan beamed. "Mommy, look at my Trex picture." He held it up proudly. Abby's face softened as she crouched to examine the crayon drawing. "Wow, that's really cool, bud. Good job." She ruffled his hair. Wesley clenched his fork, a swirl of conflicting emotions hitting him. He decided to let Dylan have his moment. "Go get your pajamas on, kiddo," he told Dylan gently. "I'll be in to read you a bedtime story soon." The boy scampered off, dinosaur picture in hand. Abby stood, avoiding Wesley's eyes. He waited until he heard Dylan's bedroom door close, then broke the tense silence. "Why didn't you text me? I had to rush to pick Dylan up." Abby rubbed the back of her neck. "Sorry. Aurora needed me to stay. We had a call with potential investors." "Investors?" Wesley echoed. His tone made the word sound like an accusation. "Let me guess Xavier set it up?" She exhaled, dropping her gaze. "Yes, he's trying to help Wesley." He scoffed. "Help? Sounds more like he's tightening his grip." The bitterness in his voice was hard to hide. "You realize I could have handled Dylan's schedule more smoothly if you just gave me a heads up." Abby's shoulders tensed, guilt flashing across her face. "I didn't think it would run so late. It's chaotic at the shop. Aurora's on edge. The finances are—" She trailed off, frustration evident. Wesley pushed away his half-eaten spaghetti. "I'm not angry you have to work. I'm angry you're shutting me out. You let your mother decide everything. Or Xavier. Where do I fit, Abby?" She threw her hands up, eyes brimming with tears. "This isn't about letting them decide. I'm stuck, can't you see that? The print shop is family. It's my inheritance. If I just walk away, Mom loses everything. She's not exactly a young woman who can start over." Wesley stood, folding his arms. "I understand loyalty, but you're letting Aurora and Xavier treat me like the enemy. Did you ever stop to think how that affects me? Or Dylan?" Abby's voice wavered, a tear escaping. "I never meant to push you away. It's just Mom keeps saying your business will pull me in the opposite direction. She claims you'll never invest in the print shop, that you think it's beneath you." "That's ridiculous," Wesley snapped, though part of him knew Aurora had probably fed Abby those lies for months. "Why would I invest in a failing operation that's constantly humiliating me? I'm not opposed to helping if we find a real plan. But your mother only wants to push me out of the picture, and I can't stand by while Xavier moves in." Silence stretched between them. Abby pressed her lips together, cheeks wet. She finally whispered, "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. I don't know how to fix this." Wesley's anger eased a fraction at the sight of her vulnerability. He reached out, gently taking her hand. "Abby, talk to me. Let me in. We might find a solution if we face it together." She squeezed his hand briefly, but then her expression clouded. "Mom insists Xavier has the best contacts, that we need him. I can't just brush him off." Wesley pulled back, frustration spiking again. "So you're siding with them?" Her lips trembled. I'm trying to save the shop. And I can't ignore that Xavier is making progress with certain partners." He let out a humorless laugh. "Right, so you'll chase that lead even if it means ignoring your own husband. Did you forget our conversation last week? I said I can't keep being disrespected." Abby's gaze darted away. She said nothing. A painful hush fell over the kitchen, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. After a few long seconds, Wesley stepped back, fists clenching at his sides. "You know what?" he murmured, voice thick with resignation. "I'll read Dylan a bedtime story, then I'm turning in. You do whatever you have to." Abby opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. She just stood there, tears shining on her lashes. Wesley walked out, leaving behind the cold ache that had lodged itself in his chest. "We're drifting further apart," he thought, ascending the stairs to Dylan's room. "And I don't know how to pull us back." Early Saturday morning, Wesley decided to clear his head by taking Dylan to a local cafe for breakfast pastries. The place had warm light spilling through large windows, the air filled with the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls and espresso. Dylan, wide-eyed, clung to Wesley's hand, marveling at the display of muffins and donuts. They took a seat near the window, sharing a small plate of cinnamon rolls. Dylan chattered happily about dinosaurs and how he wanted a new coloring book. Wesley's heart felt lighter just spending quality time with his son. Then the jingling door chime announced another customer. Wesley glanced up and his pulse kicked when he recognized Jessica. She stepped in, scanning the cafe until she spotted him. Their eyes met in a moment of mutual surprise. A tentative smile curved on Jessica's lips. She approached. "Morning," she said quietly. "I was grabbing a coffee before I take Brittany to a birthday party. Mind if I join you for a minute?" Wesley gestured to an empty seat. "Sure." He turned to Dylan. "Hey, buddy, can you say hi to my friend, Miss Jessica?" Dylan gave a shy nod. Hi. Jessica smiled warmly. Hello, Dylan. You like cinnamon rolls? He grinned. Yep, and took another sticky bite. The three chatted lightly for a few minutes, mostly about children's cartoons and local events. Jessica soon excused herself to place her coffee order. Wesley felt a strange mix of comfort and guilt. He reminded himself that he and Jessica were just old friends catching up. Yet the ease of talking with her was undeniably appealing. After retrieving her latte, Jessica returned, noticing Dylan becoming engrossed in a superhero figurine he'd brought. She leaned closer to Wesley, dropping her voice. You doing okay? The other day you seemed worried. Wesley let out a slow breath. It's still complicated. Abby is practically living at the print shop. Aurora's not helping. And Xavier, I can't stand that guy. But I'm stuck. Jessica hesitated, sympathy in her eyes. Have you tried telling Abby how you really feel about this Xavier involvement? Or are you both just waiting for the other to give in? He rubbed the back of his neck. I told her, but she's convinced she has no choice. She thinks I won't support the shop. He sighed, lowering his voice further. Truth is, I've got my own business to manage. I can't throw money into a sinking ship, and I can't watch her slip away with him. Jessica took a careful sip of her latte. Sometimes you just have to be direct. Tell her you need boundaries with Xavier. I did, he muttered. It ends in yelling or tears every time. Honestly, I'm at a loss. Jessica laid a gentle hand on his forearm, her eyes full of understanding. The warmth of her touch sent a pang of longing through Wesley. I'm sorry, she whispered. I remember how passionately you fight for the people you love. Don't lose that, okay? Dylan tapped Wesley's arm, oblivious to the adult tension. Dad, can we buy some donuts to take home for later? Mommy might like one. Wesley nodded, pulling himself out of the moment. Sure, buddy. Good idea. He lifted his gaze to Jessica. We should probably get going soon. It was nice seeing you. Jessica stood as well, cradling her Togo cup. You too, she said softly. Look, if you ever need a friend or just someone to vent to, I'm around. No pressure. He managed a small, grateful nod. Thanks, Jess. Take care. She turned, heading for the door, her figure outlined by the morning light. Wesley stared after her, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions. Am I seeking comfort in the wrong place? He wondered. Dylan tugged on his shirt sleeve. Dad, let's get donuts. The child's bright enthusiasm momentarily pushed aside Wesley's doubts. They boxed up a half-dozen assorted pastries, then climbed into the truck. On the drive home, Dylan asked if they could share a donut with Mommy. Wesley forced a smile. Sure, let's see if Mommy's home. When they returned, Abby's car was parked in the driveway. Wesley exhaled, wondering what kind of mood she'd be in. They stepped inside to find Abby sitting at the kitchen table flipping through some paperwork. She looked up, eyes flicking from Dylan's grinning face to the donut box. Morning, she ventured, voice tentative. Dylan ran over, holding the box high. We got donuts, Mommy. A soft spark lit Abby's tired eyes. Really? That's sweet. She took the box, pulling out a glazed donut. Thank you. Wesley cleared his throat. I thought we could spend some time together today, maybe do something as a family if you're free. Abby set the donut aside, tension returning to her features. I wish I could, but Aurora wants me back at the shop by noon. We're finalizing some proposals. He swallowed disappointment. Again? She frowned. Yes, it's important. Xavier lined up a potential investor who wants immediate answers. I'm sorry. She reached out, gently brushing Dylan's hair. I promise I'll be home before dinner. Dylan's smile faded, though he tried to hide it. Wesley forced a nod, masking his frustration. All right, we'll figure something out. Abby picked up her handbag, glancing at Wesley. I really am sorry, she repeated in a quiet tone. I'll make it up to you both. He said nothing more, just watched her leave. The air felt dense and oppressive, like the sky before a thunderstorm. Dylan looked up at him, confusion clouding the boy's bright eyes. Come on, kiddo, Wesley whispered, patting Dylan's shoulder. Let's eat our donuts. As they settled at the table, Wesley couldn't shake the feeling that the path before him was branching in multiple directions. One route led deeper into this tense struggle with Abby, Aurora, and Xavier. Another route felt like it might circle back to Jessica, an old flame, someone who seemed to care, but also a potential spark that could blow up in his face. He glanced at Dylan's innocent smile. I need to keep my family together if I can, Wesley thought, determined yet uncertain. But each day that passed, the rift widened, and an uneasy sense told him a major turning point lay just around the bend, waiting for one decision to tip his entire world into chaos. Warm summer air enveloped Aurora's sprawling estate like a heavy velvet curtain. A gentle breeze rustled through the manicured hedges, doing little to dispel the day's lingering heat. Twilight was just settling, turning the sky a hazy purple. Against this backdrop, the estate's grand backyard bustled with business acquaintances, local investors, and curious onlookers. Aurora herself surveyed it all from the terrace, a self-satisfied gleam in her eyes. Abby stood near a cluster of rose bushes, smoothing the hem of her pale blue cocktail dress. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worn something so formal. A soft hum of music drifted from hidden speakers, punctuated by the low murmur of conversations. Glasses clinked, and the savory aroma of catered hors d'oeuvres filled the air. Xavier approached, looking dapper in a tailored navy suit that contrasted with the silver highlights in his tie. He offered Abby a flute of sparkling wine. We need to make a good impression tonight, he said with a confident half-smile. Potential partners are watching. She accepted the glass, her palm already slick with nerves. I know. My mother's made that clear. Abby glanced toward Aurora, who was in conversation with two older gentlemen wearing sharp blazers. Even from a distance, Aurora's pointed gaze told Abby to stay close to Xavier, to charm the potential investors at this gathering. As if sensing her reluctance, Xavier leaned in a fraction closer than necessary. Just relax. We'll show them you're fully committed to revitalizing the print shop. His voice dipped lower, and a whiff of his cologne brushed Abby's senses. No distractions, right? Abby swallowed. She thought of Wesley, how he'd practically begged her not to get entangled with Xavier, but here she was, pinned between her mother's ambition and the pressing weight of finances. Right, she echoed, forcing a small nod. Xavier's smile widened. Then let's mingle. And remember, you're not just your mother's daughter tonight. You're the future face of the company. He placed a guiding hand on the small of her back, steering her toward a group of investors. They made polite introductions, and Abby found herself feigning confidence as she answered questions about the print shop's direction. Xavier would chime in with practiced charm, dropping hints of strategic partnerships and fresh leadership. Occasionally, she noticed Aurora glancing their way, clearly approving of this united front. Yet with every passing minute, Abby's unease grew. The dress felt too tight, the summer air too suffocating, and each time Xavier placed a hand on her arm or leaned near to whisper a quip, Abby's stomach twisted in guilt. Far across the lawn, near the ivy-covered garden wall, Wesley stood unnoticed by most. He hadn't been invited, Aurora made sure of that, but he'd learned of the event from a mutual acquaintance in town. The sight that greeted him felt like a punch to the gut. Abby, radiant in her dress, laughing softly with Xavier while investors leaned in with interest. Wesley clenched his hands, half hidden behind a potted hydrangea. The subtle, intimate way Xavier guided Abby, the way her body language seemed uncertain but compliant, fueled the anger simmering in Wesley's chest. He had hoped to corner Abby, talk sense into her about how these events looked, how they hurt him. Yet seeing her drift closer to Xavier in an environment that felt decidedly exclusive, his mother-in-law's domain, not his, made him feel like an uninvited intruder in his own marriage. He edged closer, dodging small clusters of guests. Snippets of conversation about innovative expansions and fresh capital floated through the air. Finally, he paused near the kitchen's open French doors, just steps away from the center of the gathering. That's when he witnessed a moment that stopped his heart cold. Xavier reached for Abby's hand, openly, under the pretense of guiding her to the next group of potential investors. She didn't pull back immediately. The gesture, though brief, came across as intimate. Abby's cheeks pinked and she looked away. Wesley's breath hitched. A surge of jealousy roared within him. His first impulse was to storm over and yank Abby away to confront them both, but a flicker of pride held him still. Confronting her here, in front of these people, would only give Aurora exactly what she wants: public humiliation. He forced himself to slip back into the shadows, teeth grinding. A swirl of classical music from the speakers melded with the pounding of his pulse. Turning on his heel, Wesley strode off into the night, leaving the glow of party lights behind. His heart ached, and every step felt like retreat. There was no victory to be had here. He only managed to confirm his worst suspicions. Abby was slipping further from his reach. It was near midnight when the last of the guests departed Aurora's estate. The lawn bore the remnants of a successful soiree: discarded napkins, empty champagne glasses waiting to be cleared. Aurora had already disappeared upstairs to rest, presumably pleased with the night's outcomes. Abby hovered by the patio, the glow of a string of fairy lights outlining her silhouette. Her head throbbed from the wine and the tension of forced smiles. She wanted nothing more than to go home, though she dreaded the confrontation that might await her with Wesley. A light footstep made her turn. Xavier emerged from the shadows, jacket draped over one arm, his tie loosened. "You were amazing tonight," he said, voice low and smooth. "I think we've got some real momentum with those partners." Abby pressed her lips together. "I hope so," she replied, not quite meeting his gaze. "I need to go. Dylan's probably asleep, and Wesley." Her voice trailed off. She didn't know how to complete that sentence without betraying her troubled marriage. Xavier moved closer, his expression full of concern. "Look, I know this is complicated." He reached out, lightly touching her elbow. "But you should be proud. You carried yourself with poise. Aurora's proud too, even if she has a strange way of showing it." She let out a tired sigh. "I feel like I'm caught between two storms: my mother's demands and my husband's anger. I hate it." Xavier nodded, sympathy shading his eyes. "I get it. Aurora can be overbearing. And Wesley, well, he doesn't exactly see the potential in what we're doing here." He paused, letting the statement hang. Then he added quietly, "Sometimes you need to choose what's best for yourself, Abby." An uncomfortable flutter stirred in her chest. The memory of Wesley's hurt expression filled her mind. How did things get this bad? She wrapped her arms around herself, as if warding off the night's chill. "I don't want to give up on my marriage," she whispered, "but I can't let the shop collapse either. I promised my mom I'd help keep it alive." Xavier's voice softened, and he stepped in, closing the distance between them. "You don't have to decide everything tonight. But if you ever need someone to listen, to support you, I'm here." He brushed a stray hair from her cheek. "You deserve someone who believes in your capabilities." The tenderness of his gesture sent warning bells through Abby's mind. Yet a small part of her felt a rush of being seen, admired, wanted. She swallowed hard. "I appreciate your concern," she managed, stepping back so that his hand fell from her face. The guilt coiled tighter inside her. This was heading down a dangerous path. She wasn't sure she could keep towing the line. "I should go," she said more firmly, turning away. "Thank you for everything tonight, Xavier. Good night." She headed into the house, her heart pounding like a guilty drummer. Upstairs, Aurora's door remained closed, though light glowed beneath it. No doubt her mother was busy sending texts or making notes on the evening's successes. Abby tiptoed to a guest bedroom they always kept for out-of-town visitors, deciding she'd crash there rather than drive home so late. But she knew the real reason. She couldn't face Wesley's hurt accusations tonight. In the dark stillness of that borrowed bedroom, Abby sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. She wished she could rewind time to a point when she and Wesley had felt safe and united, dreaming about building a life for Dylan. Now it felt like each new event widened the gulf between them. Tears stung her eyes. She pictured the sparkle in Xavier's gaze, his tempting reassurance, and at the same time, she saw Wesley's pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the night, unsure who she was apologizing to, her husband herself, or the vow she'd betrayed by letting another man become too close. The next morning dawned crisp and golden, sunlight streaming through Wesley's living room windows. He sat on the sofa, phone in hand, contemplating the storm raging within him. He hadn't slept well. Flashbacks of Abby and Xavier at Aurora's party kept him tossing until dawn. Dylan was already off at daycare for the day, oblivious to the tension that coated the house like a thick layer of dust. Wesley clenched his jaw, replaying the scene of Abby letting Xavier guide her hand. She's in too deep, he thought, shoulders taut. A buzz of his phone jolted him from the bitter spiral. It was a text from Damien, his longtime friend and now legal confidant. Available to talk? Let's grab coffee at the diner. Wesley didn't hesitate. 30 minutes later, he walked into the local diner, a retro-style joint with vinyl booths and stainless steel accents. Damien waited at a corner booth, sipping from a steaming mug. Wesley slid into the seat across from him. "Thanks for meeting me," he muttered, voice tight. Damien offered a sympathetic nod. "You sounded stressed. Figured we could talk." A waitress bustled over and Wesley ordered a black coffee. Damien waited until she left before leaning forward. "So, what's the situation now?" Wesley exhaled slowly. "Worse. She's basically partnering with that guy Xavier. My mother-in-law is pulling the strings. It's like she wants Abby to ditch me. I can't watch them get cozy without wanting to do something drastic." Damien studied Wesley carefully. "And where does that leave you in terms of your marriage? You mentioned threats of divorce before." Wesley rubbed his temples. "I don't want to jump straight into that. But I can't stay in the dark either. I need answers. If Abby's truly crossing lines, I won't be the blind fool. I'm no saint, but I can't handle betrayal in my own home." Damien tapped a finger on the table. "Right. Well, legally speaking, if you suspect infidelity, you might want to gather proof. Evidence can matter in certain divorce scenarios, especially regarding any prenuptial terms or custody disputes." A flicker of discomfort passed across Wesley's face. The idea of spying on Abby felt wrong, yet the dread of being lied to gnawed deeper. "I hate the thought of playing detective," he admitted, voice rough. "But I'd rather know the truth than be strung along." Damien hesitated, then leaned in. "Look, I'm not encouraging domestic espionage, but sometimes a spouse in your position needs clarity. If you do suspect Abby's cheating, having concrete proof could simplify things in court. You mentioned possible video or something similar?" Wesley swallowed. "I've been considering it. Setting up a camera or two if I ever have to leave the house for a business trip, just to see if Xavier shows up." Damien nodded grimly. "I'd advise caution. Check your local laws. Some states have restrictions on recording. But if it's your own home, you often have rights. Just be sure not to cross any lines that'd backfire." The waitress returned with Wesley's coffee. He took it with a tight-lipped thanks, inhaling the bitter aroma. "I appreciate the legal angle," he said softly, "but this is my marriage, my family. I feel like I'm sinking to Aurora's level by plotting behind Abby's back." Damien's expression gentled. "I get it. You're a decent guy, Wesley, but you're up against manipulative forces. Aurora isn't playing fair. I'd hate to see you blindsided." Wesley nodded, a lump in his throat. Before he could speak again, his phone vibrated with a new text. He glanced down to see a strange number. "Watch out. Xavier is no good. He's using Abby." His brow furrowed. He read it twice, heart racing. "Damien, look at this." He slid the phone across the table. Damien's eyes flicked over the message. "Anonymous," he mused. "Could be someone from Aurora's circle, or maybe a scorned associate of Xavier's. But it aligns with what you suspect." Wesley's mind churned, uncertain if the tip was legit or just stirring the pot. "I don't know who's behind it, but it makes me want to move faster. I need to plan carefully." Damien laid a reassuring hand on Wesley's shoulder. "Then plan. Don't act out an anger act with clarity. If that means setting up a scenario to see if Xavier visits, so be it." They finished their coffees, the tension thick. As Wesley stood to leave, Damien added, "Keep me posted. If you get the evidence you need, we'll talk about next steps." Wesley thanked him, slipping out of the diner into the bright mid-morning sun. The text swam in his thoughts like a silent alarm. "All right, Xavier, let's see your true colors." 2 days later, Abby stepped into the living room to find Wesley snapping shut a small suitcase. She paused, startled by the sight. "You're traveling?" she asked, her voice tight with apprehension. Wesley kept his tone casual, though tension thrummed beneath. Yeah, there's a project site 2 hours out. They need me there for a couple nights to consult on a new geothermal system. He avoided her eyes as he zipped the suitcase with unnecessary force. Abby chewed her lip. When do you leave? Tonight. He turned, at last meeting her gaze with forced calm. I'll pick Dylan up from daycare first, then drop him off at your sister's for the night. She said she could watch him until I'm back. He paused. I assume you'll be busy with the print shop again. A flicker of guilt passed over Abby's face. Yes, we have some deadlines coming up. She hesitated, inching forward. I can rearrange if you need me here. I don't want you thinking I'm ignoring. He waved her off with a curt shake of his head. Don't worry about it. Focus on your work. Abby's eyes glistened with a complex mix of regret and resignation. She reached out like she might hug him, but he turned away to pick up a set of papers from the side table. The unspoken distance weighed on them both. She exhaled shakily. Okay, be safe. Several hours later, as dusk settled in, Wesley loaded his suitcase into the back of his truck, gave a perfunctory goodbye to Abby, and drove off. He circled around the block once to watch the house from a distance. His heart pounded. Hidden inside, small cameras installed with help from Martin were set to record if anyone stepped in after he left. A part of me still hopes I'm wrong, Wesley thought, the pit in his stomach growing heavier. Yet the memory of Abby and Xavier, the anonymous warning text, all pointed him toward the grim truth he was now desperate to confirm. He parked behind a row of hedges down the street. Martin's vehicle was already there, engine off, lights out. Wesley climbed into the passenger seat. Martin, a broad-shouldered man with a warm but serious demeanor, offered a tight nod. You ready for this? Wesley's breath shuddered out. As ready as I'll ever be. He pulled out his phone, connecting to the camera feed. The living room camera displayed an empty room with the soft glow of a lamp. Another feed from the hallway near the master bedroom also showed no movement. Minutes stretched to an hour, and Wesley's nerves began to fray. Then, close to 9 o'clock, headlights swept the driveway. Through the camera feed, they watched Abby's silhouette move across the living room. She seemed agitated, pacing near the window. Suddenly, a second set of headlights illuminated the street. A car pulled up. The cameras offered no direct view of the driveway, but a moment later, the living room camera picked up Abby opening the door. In stepped Xavier, carrying a slim briefcase. Wesley's throat went dry. Martin reached over, gently squeezing Wesley's shoulder. On the small screen, Abby locked the door behind Xavier. He set his briefcase on the coffee table, presumably for paperwork. They watched as the pair settled on the couch. Abby pointed at some documents, perhaps referencing finances or investor details. For a time, it looked eerily professional, like two colleagues. The tension in Wesley's chest eased slightly. Maybe they really are just working. But then, about an hour in, the tone on the screen shifted. Abby let out a muffled sob, burying her face in her hands. Xavier scooted closer, draping an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, tears visible even in the grainy camera footage. His lips moved, likely offering comfort. Wesley's jaw clenched. Abby turned, pressing her face against Xavier's chest. He stroked her hair, a gesture far from professional. At that moment, they both rose from the couch. Abby hesitated, wringing her hands. Xavier touched her cheek, then pulled her into an embrace. Even with low-resolution feed, the intimacy was undeniable. Wesley's vision blurred with anger and heartbreak. Martin let out a quiet curse. I'm sorry, man. On the screen, Abby tilted her head back, tears shining. Xavier said something, his mouth close to her ear. She began crying in earnest, and he wrapped his arms around her. Wesley braced himself, fearing the worst, but Abby suddenly pulled away, shaking her head vigorously. She wiped her tears, then sank onto the couch again, face in her hands. Xavier hovered, then lowered himself next to her. They leaned close, as though discussing something heatedly. After another tense minute, they slowly separated, as if hitting an invisible boundary. Abby pressed her palms to her face while Xavier paced, running a hand through his hair. Wesley released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. They haven't slept together, he murmured, voice thick. But that's more than friendly. Martin looked pained. I think that's all the proof you need that your marriage is in real danger. Emotionally, she's leaning on him. Next time, who knows where it'll lead? A wave of nausea rose in Wesley. He watched the feed as Abby stood, walking Xavier to the front door. They embraced again briefly before he left. She lingered at the door long after he disappeared, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Trembling with betrayal, Wesley ended the feed. The vehicle felt suffocating. I've seen enough, he rasped. Let's get out of here. Martin started the engine, casting a worried glance. What's your move now? Wesley couldn't answer immediately. His thoughts spun like a broken compass. Finally, he whispered, I'm going to confront this head-on. If she doesn't come clean, I'll do what I have to do. They drove off into the starlit darkness, leaving behind the house where Abby wept alone. Wesley felt as though a thread had snapped inside him, unleashing a fierce resolve. No more doubts. No more illusions. He would force the truth into the open, whatever the cost. A few tense days went by like the calm before a summer storm. Wesley, silent and grim, carried on as though nothing had changed, keeping his suspicions carefully under wraps. Abby seemed cautious, too. She texted him about routine errands, asked vaguely about his schedule, but never pressed too hard. Each exchange crackled with unspoken strain. Then, one afternoon, Wesley's phone buzzed with a short message from Abby. Hey, could you do another out-of-town consult? Heard you might have to check a site again. Wesley stared at the words, anger rolling through his gut. So this is how she sets it up. He inhaled, forcing calm. His reply was equally short. Sure, leaving tomorrow night. That night he packed a small overnight bag and bid a clipped goodbye to Abby, who barely met his gaze. Driving off, he did the same routine as before circling the block, meeting Martin in a discreet spot. Martin had helped him fine-tune the hidden cameras. Everything was set to record not only the living room, but also the hallway near the master bedroom. It felt invasive, but Wesley's resolve hardened. He had to know if Abby was crossing the final line. They settled inside Martin's sedan, darkness pooling around them. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the occasional rumble of a passing car. Wesley stared at his phone's screen, which displayed a live feed from the cameras. Nothing but an empty living room lamplit in dull warmth. Time ticked slowly, each minute echoing in Wesley's chest. Close to 10 p.m. headlights swept up the driveway on screen. Abby appeared, pacing. Then the second set of headlights arrived. The front door opened. Xavier stepped inside, wearing a casual button-down and carrying a paper bag wine, it seemed. Wesley's mouth went dry. Next to him, Martin tensed. They watched as Abby and Xavier engaged in hushed conversation. Abby looked frazzled, picking at her fingernails. Xavier offered her a bottle of wine, which she reluctantly accepted. The pair moved to the couch. After a few minutes of flipping through papers, they poured drinks. The tension radiated off them even in the grainy camera footage. Over the next half hour, the tone shifted. Laughter replaced tense murmurs. One glass of wine turned into two. Abby sank back against the cushions, tears welling up as she spoke clearly, venting about her life, her mother, and no doubt, her troubled marriage. Xavier leaned in, brushing a tear from her cheek, then gently stroked her hair. She didn't pull away. Wesley's heart hammered like thunder. He grit his teeth, forcing himself not to barge in prematurely. But when Xavier cupped Abby's chin and pressed a tentative kiss to her lips, and she let him, Wesley's composure shattered. That's it, he bit out, tossing his phone onto the seat. Martin fumbled for the door locks. They sped down the street, stopping just short of Wesley's driveway. Fueled by adrenaline, the two men rushed up to the house. Inside, the living room lights glowed softly. Through the window, Wesley saw Abby and Xavier locked in a heated kiss. Rage flared, so intense it felt like an inferno beneath his skin. He burst through the front door with Martin right behind him. Abby and Xavier tore apart, eyes wide with shock. The wine glasses tipped over, dark liquid splashing the coffee table. "Wesley!" Abby gasped, stumbling to her feet, face pale as moonlight. Xavier swore under his breath, hurrying to straighten his shirt. His expression flickered from guilt to indignation. "Man, calm down." Calm down, Wesley's voice roared through the small living room. The heartbreak and betrayal he'd been suppressing exploded in one furious moment. Martin, phone in hand, recorded the entire scene at Wesley's nod, visible proof of what was happening. Abby, tears streaking her cheeks, tried to speak. I was just... Save it, Wesley snarled. He glared at Xavier, who backed up a step. You come into my house. Pretend this is some business meeting. Is this what you call professional, Abby? She shook her head, trembling. I'm sorry, Wesley, we weren't. I didn't mean... You didn't mean what? He shouted, voice cracking. To betray me or to get caught? Xavier stiffened, raising his palms defensively. Look, we had too much wine, emotions ran high, let's not... Wesley cut him off with a cold laugh. You don't get to lecture me about emotions. You want to steal my wife, my family, my dignity? I'm done. Furious tears pricked his eyes, though he refused to let them fall. He tore off his wedding ring and hurled it onto the floor. The metal clinked, rolling to a stop near the couch. Abby sobbed, covering her mouth with one hand. Wes, please. No, he said flatly. We're over. You made your choice. His gaze raked over Xavier, then back to Abby. Pack your things and go. Both of you out. Abby collapsed into anguished tears. Xavier, looking rattled, tried to help her stand, but she pushed him away. She stared at Wesley, devastated. It was a mistake, I swear. He turned from her, chest heaving. Martin lowered the phone, the footage now complete. Wesley, Martin murmured, voice thick with concern. Wesley swallowed, the taste of heartbreak bitter on his tongue. You heard me, he repeated. Get out. Xavier stumbled out the front door, shrugging on his jacket with shaking hands. He was too flustered to offer Abby much more than a hasty goodbye. In the dark driveway, his car sat with the passenger door still ajar from his rush to enter earlier. Rain began to fall, thick droplets splattering on the hood, matching the intensity of Wesley's wrath inside. He started the engine, tires screeching as he backed onto the street. Fueled by panic and a few glasses of wine, Xavier pressed the accelerator too hard. Just down the road, blue flashing lights materialized, an officer signaling him to pull over. Xavier cursed. Fate wasn't on his side tonight. Inside the house, Abby curled onto the couch, tears mixing with the lingering wine stains on her dress. Wesley stood across the room, anger radiating from him like lightning. Martin, sensing the explosive tension, quietly slipped out to wait in his car, giving them some space. Abby's eyes lifted to Wesley's, despair echoing in every word. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this. It never went all the way. He clenched his fists, heart pounding with betrayal. It doesn't matter if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours, what I saw was enough. His voice cracked. All the times I asked you to choose me, to let go of this weird alliance with Xavier, and you didn't. She sank her face in her hands. I was scared, she whispered, of losing the print shop, of disappointing my mother. I got pulled in. It's not love, it's a mess. Wesley's laugh came out raw. So you ruined our marriage for a mess? Thanks for the clarification. Abby rocked forward, tears dripping onto her knees. The front door rattled behind them, Aurora's voice cut through like a whip. Abby? Are you here? What in the world is going on? She stepped inside, hair damp from the now pouring rain, eyes blazing when she spotted Abby's tear-streaked face. Wesley squared his shoulders, glaring at his mother-in-law. Perfect timing, Aurora. Did you come to see your victory? He spat bitterly. Well, congratulations. You managed to break us. Aurora's eyes darted from her daughter to Wesley. Don't blame me for your childish theatrics, she snapped, reaching for Abby's hand. What happened? Abby sniffled, too ashamed to form words. Wesley stepped forward. Your precious Xavier was here, he said icily. Now I'm divorcing your daughter. Happy? Aurora's jaw dropped. Then she turned on Wesley, jabbing a finger at his chest. You have no proof of any wrongdoing, you... Oh, I have plenty, Wesley shot back, pulling out his phone, though he didn't bother playing the recorded footage. Enough to destroy Abby in court if I wanted to. He stared Aurora down. Now get out of my house! Aurora's voice pitched with fury. This is still Abby's home, too. You can't just... Wesley's face was stone. Yes, I can. She can stay at your place or a motel or wherever. She lost the right to call this home when she let Xavier into my bed, our bed. He stopped himself, choking on the words. Abby lurched to her feet, stumbling. It never got that far. Wesley turned away, voice hollow. Get your things and go. He couldn't bear to look at her. I'll have my lawyer contact you. Aurora threw an arm around Abby, guiding her to the door, hurling curses at Wesley. He refused to engage, arms folded, face etched in anguish. A swirl of cold night air swept through the living room as they left, thunder rumbling in the distance. When the door slammed shut, Wesley slid to his knees, pressing his palm against the cool floor. He listened to the rain pound outside, matching the pounding in his head. The weight of finality settled. It's over. Morning light brought no comfort. The house felt like a graveyard of memories, photos of happier times mocking Wesley from the walls. He barely slept, his mind replaying the humiliating confrontation again and again. By noon, Damien arrived, briefcase in hand and concern in his eyes. Sorry it had to come to this, he said quietly, setting some files on the kitchen table. But if you're ready, we can file for divorce. We'll need all relevant documents, including that prenup you mentioned. Wesley nodded stiffly. I want it done fast. I can't keep living in limbo. He pointed to a cardboard box on the counter stuffed with papers. That's everything: bank statements, property deeds, the prenup. If Abby challenges anything, we have the recordings to show cause. Damien leafed through the documents, frowning in approval. This should secure most assets for you, especially since the agreement states any marital misconduct forfeits her claims. Wesley exhaled slowly, the prospect of finalizing a divorce both liberating and agonizing. She can keep her personal things, of course. I won't stoop to vengeance. I just want my house and my business untouched. Damien gave a somber nod, sifting through the bank papers. We'll file these by tomorrow. He paused. You know Aurora might try to countersue or threaten you. She's manipulative and might claim you set Abby up. Wesley's jaw tightened. Let her try. We have enough evidence to show Abby's wrongdoing. Besides, the prenup's pretty explicit. He rested his elbows on the table, voice losing its edge. I hate that it ended like this. But once she chose Xavier, I can't unsee that. Damien placed a reassuring hand on Wesley's shoulder. I understand. He stacked the files neatly, snapping his briefcase shut. I'll keep you updated every step of the way. If Abby tries to contest custody of Dylan, we'll address that too. Wesley's expression darkened. Dylan stays with me. I won't let Aurora fill his head with garbage. He stood, walking Damien to the door. Thank you, man. Anytime, Damien murmured, stepping out into the midday sun. Alone again, Wesley looked around the hushed living room. The absence of Abby's presence was sharp, but the sting of betrayal ran deeper. Gathering stray items her sweaters tossed over chairs, a half-finished craft project she'd started with Dylan, he boxed them up methodically. Better to face the emptiness than stare at reminders of broken promises. A week dragged by in a fog of formalities. Wesley woke each day to silence. Dylan alternated between Wesley's care and short visits with Abby under strict conditions that Aurora wouldn't be around. Abby complied, her tearful apologies and pleas for reconciliation falling on Wesley's resolute deaf ear. One afternoon, Abby showed up at the house to talk custody arrangements. She looked worn down, dark circles under her eyes. Clutching her purse, she stood by the threshold. Can we discuss Dylan's schedule? She asked, voice trembling. Wesley stepped aside, letting her in. The tension was palpable as they moved to the living room. Dylan was at school, leaving them alone in the quiet house. Fine, Wesley said, seating himself on the armchair, arms crossed. But I won't budge on letting Aurora near him. Abby sank onto the couch, fiddling with the strap of her purse. I know, she murmured. Mom's furious she's been threatening lawsuits, saying you entrapped me. But I can't defend her anymore. Her voice cracked. I messed up. She pushed, but I let myself be pushed. Wesley's gaze flicked to her, heartbreak stirring despite his anger. I needed you to stand with me, not against me. Abby nodded, tears forming. I realize that now, and I can't fix it. But Dylan, he shouldn't suffer because of our mistakes. He swallowed. I agree. For now, he stays here. You can pick him up after school a few days a week, spend time with him. But no overnight visits unless I'm certain Aurora won't interfere. Abby blinked back tears but nodded. Thank you. She paused, lower lip trembling. I'm looking at an apartment near the print shop. Mom's place is toxic, to say the least. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak further about Aurora. The woman had even tried calling him multiple times, leaving seething voicemails about fabricated evidence and lawsuits. Damien had assured him that Aurora's threats held little ground. The print shop's finances were in shambles, giving her bigger worries than tangling with a pile of legal bills. A loaded silence hovered. Abby stood, purse in hand, eyes reflecting regret. I'm so sorry, Wesley. I know sorry means nothing now, but I truly am. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain stoic. Get your life together. Maybe one day we can be civil for Dylan's sake. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Without another word, she slipped out the door, leaving behind an ache that pulsed like a slow bruise. When she was gone, Wesley let out a shuddering breath. He wandered to the front porch, staring at the empty driveway. Part of him felt relief that the confrontation was done. Another part felt hollow. His phone chimed a message from Damien. Aurora's threats hold no merit. Also, her business debt might sink her soon. Keep your guard up, but don't worry too much. Wesley looked up, the late afternoon sun caught behind drifting clouds, casting shadows across the lawn. He wondered if there was any piece of his life left unshattered. A familiar thought crossed his mind. Jessica. After everything, he found himself missing her calm energy, her understanding eyes, yet he shoved the notion aside. It's too soon. For now, he stood at the brink of a lonely, uncharted path, custody arrangements half settled, the divorce rolling forward. He closed his eyes and inhaled the cool breeze. One chapter was ending, violently and painfully. He could only hope that, in time, he might find a gentler beginning. Wesley sat in a hushed family courtroom, nerves prickling at the base of his neck. The fluorescent lights felt too harsh, the bench too rigid. He ran a hand over his face, glancing behind him. Damien stood by, reviewing paperwork on a slim tablet. Across the aisle, Abby sat with folded hands, her eyes cast down. Aurora was conspicuously absent, likely avoiding any confrontation with Wesley's legal team. The judge, a middle-aged woman with watchful eyes, read through documents detailing the events leading up to the divorce. Every so often she paused, skimming the prenuptial agreement that Damien had highlighted. Wesley tried to steady his breathing, recalling all the chaos that had brought him here, the betrayal, the confrontation, the final heartbreak. This is the end of it, he reminded himself. No more dragging each other through torment. Once the judge finished, she cleared her throat. In light of these findings, and the admitted marital misconduct, her gaze flicked pointedly at Abby. The court awards primary custody of the minor child to Mr. Wesley Cole, with scheduled visitation for Miss Abby Cole, pending compliance with all terms, including that visits not occur at Miss Aurora Clark's residence. She tapped her pen on the paperwork. As for property distribution, per the prenuptial agreement, the majority of assets remain with Mr. Cole. Miss Cole retains her personal belongings. A quiet exhale left Wesley's lips. Relief, tinged with sadness, swelled in his chest. He forced himself not to look at Abby, though he sensed her trembling. Neither of us wanted this, but it's where we ended up. The judge raised her gavel. I hereby grant the divorce. This court stands adjourned. A dull thud of the gavel sealed the decision. Damien patted Wesley's shoulder. It's done, he whispered, helping pack up documents. Nearby, Abby blinked back tears. She approached carefully as though afraid to come too close. Wesley, she murmured, I want you to know I'll respect the custody terms. And her voice caught. I'm sorry. He met her gaze, a complex swirl of regret and resolution in his eyes. I hope you find the stability you need, he answered quietly. For Dylan's sake, let's keep things civil. She gave a small nod, tears sliding down her cheeks. Take care of him. Just then, the courtroom door opened. A flustered bailiff called for the next case, prompting everyone to move along. Abby gathered her purse, stepping away. The finality weighed heavily, but Wesley turned to follow Damien out into the corridor, shoulders squared. We survived the storm. Now we piece together what's left. A few days later, rumors trickled in about Aurora's financial calamity. The print shop sat on the edge of bankruptcy. Debt collectors circled like vultures. Abby, meanwhile, decided to press for her back wages money Aurora had withheld under flimsy pretenses. With Damien's help, she filed a claim, determined not to let Aurora's manipulations continue. Henry, Abby's father, quietly vacated the family home soon after. Neighbors whispered that he'd had enough of Aurora's relentless scheming. The once proud matriarch now grappled with a failing business and a fractured family. Wesley, reading the updates in the local paper, felt a grim sense of closure. Maybe that's the price she pays for tearing people apart. The afternoon sun bathed Main Street in a gentle glow, reflecting off shop windows and warming the sidewalks. Wesley emerged from a hardware store, carrying a small bag of drilling equipment parts. He'd spent his morning finalizing new contracts for his geothermal business. With no more illusions of a stable marriage, he threw himself into work, but a faint loneliness persisted. As he stepped onto the curb, a familiar voice called his name. "Wesley, hi!" Jessica stood by a local cafe, Brittany tugging at her jacket with an eager grin. Wesley's heart gave a small jolt. He hadn't seen Jessica much since everything unraveled. She looked more at ease now, her posture relaxed, hair pinned back neatly. Brittany waved excitedly, a lollipop in hand. "Hey," Wesley said, clearing his throat. "How have you been?" Jessica's gaze flickered with hesitant warmth. "We're okay. I heard about the court decision." She paused, eyes full of sympathy. "I'm sorry things turned out like that." He nodded. "Thanks. It was rough, but it's done." They stood in a small pocket of sunlight, people drifting by with casual hellos. Brittany tugged at Jessica's sleeve, whispering something about being hungry. Jessica gave a gentle laugh. "We were just about to grab a late lunch. Would you like to join us?" Wesley hesitated. Is it too soon? But the open sincerity in Jessica's expression made his chest tighten. "Sure," he found himself saying. "I'd like that." Inside the cafe, they chose a cozy booth near a window. Brittany chattered about her latest obsession with dinosaurs, reminding Wesley of Dylan's similar fascination. The conversation flowed easily, peppered with childlike humor. Wesley caught Jessica smiling at him a few times, a soft pink tinge coloring her cheeks. Over a simple meal of sandwiches and iced tea, Jessica asked cautiously, "So how are you holding up, really?" He sighed, meeting her concerned gaze. "Some days are better than others," he admitted. "I'm focusing on Dylan and my work, but nights can be tough. This house used to feel like a home, you know." She reached across the table, gently placing a hand over his. The gesture brought a surge of warmth. "I get it," she whispered, eyes reflecting her own memories of heartbreak. "After my divorce, I felt adrift for a while." He managed a slight smile. "You seem happier these days," he observed, nodding at Brittany, who was deeply engrossed in drawing a Trex on a kid's menu. "I'm glad." Jessica gave a modest shrug. "I'm learning to be okay on my own. But yes, having Brittany helps. I have a new job at a local design boutique. Things are looking up." The conversation lulled into a comfortable hush. Outside, the spring breeze carried faint traces of blooming flowers. Wesley mustered his courage, remembering the spark he once shared with Jessica, the regrets that haunted him. He inhaled. "Listen, I know it's a delicate time, but would you have dinner with me sometime? A proper dinner. No kids, just us talking." Jessica's breath caught, color rising in her cheeks. She glanced at Brittany, who was now humming to herself. Then she looked back at Wesley, a tender smile forming. "That sounds nice," she said softly. "But are you sure you're ready?" Wesley tightened his hand around hers for a moment. "I'm sure. I can't promise I have everything figured out, but I'd like the chance to reconnect. If you'll let me." She studied him, searching for sincerity. Whatever she saw there, it eased her worry. "I'd like that too," she replied, voice almost shy. Their eyes locked, a gentle spark passing between them. Brittany chose that moment to triumphantly show off her Trex doodle, breaking the intensity with a burst of laughter. Wesley joined in, feeling something inside him lighten. A second chance, he thought. Maybe I do deserve it. Weeks slipped by, a quiet transformation taking place in Wesley's life. He managed to buy a larger house on the outskirts of town, one with a wide front porch overlooking rolling fields. The property felt like a fresh start space for Dylan to grow, and fewer memories haunting every corner. He invited Jessica and Brittany over for a small housewarming. As they pulled up, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard. Dylan raced around, excited to show Brittany a new treehouse that Wesley had built from scratch. While the kids scampered off, Jessica took in the cozy living room. Boxes were still half unpacked, but she admired the sense of potential in the space. A sense of cautious hope fluttered in her chest, remembering how different Wesley's life had been just months ago. They ended up in the kitchen, unpacking groceries for a casual barbecue. Jessica wore a simple sundress, hair loose, moving comfortably around Wesley as though they'd known each other forever. "I can't believe you built that treehouse so fast," she teased, opening a carton of lemonade. Wesley chuckled. "Had to keep Dylan busy. Plus, I had help from Martin." He paused, leaning against the counter. "Thank you for coming today. It means a lot to share this moment with you." She set the carton down, meeting his gaze. "I'm happy to be here," she said softly. "You're working hard to build a stable home for Dylan. It's—" She hesitated, voice dipping with emotion. "It's admirable." A flicker of vulnerability crossed Wesley's face. "I want something better for him than what he's witnessed," he said, referencing the marital turmoil and Abby's departure. Then he cleared his throat. "You know, if you ever consider it, maybe you and Brittany could—" He trailed off, not wanting to push, but the invitation was there, unspoken. Her cheeks warmed, understanding his gentle suggestion that perhaps, in time, they might merge their lives. "Let's see how things go," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm open to exploring that future." He smiled, relief shining through. "Baby steps," he told himself. No need to rush. Later, as the sun set, the four of them, Wesley, Jessica, Dylan, and Brittany, gathered on the porch to watch the sky turn pink and orange. The kids laughed, comparing the colors to fruit punch and peach ice cream. Jessica slid a hand into Wesley's, quietly lacing their fingers. And for the first time in a long while, Wesley felt a sense of peaceful belonging. Yes, it was unconventional, a patchwork of two separate families forging a new path. But it felt right. Several months slipped by in a blur of everyday routines and gentle shifts. The news around town spoke of Aurora's print shop filing for bankruptcy. Debts piled too high to salvage, forcing her to sell off machinery and equipment at a fraction of their value. Rumor had it the bank seized her property. Henry formally dissolved their marriage, distancing himself from the financial wreckage. Xavier, meanwhile, fell into obscurity. His marriage had ended too, his wife finally leaving. Some said he bounced around odd jobs in a neighboring county, looking lost and frustrated, a cautionary tale for anyone who believed they could thrive on manipulation alone. Abby, for her part, found a modest apartment on the quieter side of town. She finally broke ties with Aurora, focusing on steady work to pay bills. Whenever she picked Dylan up, she looked subdued but determined, making small, sincere efforts to rebuild trust with her son. While Wesley stayed firm about no overnight visits at Aurora's place, he allowed Dylan to see Abby on weekends if she kept her distance from her mother. In Wesley's new home, the final boxes were unpacked. The house felt lived in now, warm and inviting. Jessica and Brittany had slowly integrated into the space, though Jessica kept her own apartment for the time being. One crisp morning, Wesley gathered them in the living room for a surprise announcement. He and Jessica had decided to marry quietly at the local courthouse. The ceremony was simple, just a few close friends, Dylan and Brittany. No grand reception, no fanfare. Yet as Jessica and Wesley exchanged vows, a gentle joy blossomed. Dylan and Brittany stood by, giggling about how they'd become sort of siblings. Martin snapped photos with his phone, tears of happiness in his eyes. Damien, looking proud, gave a toast at the small gathering afterward. Days later, as the newly blended family prepared for a summer trip, a road trip to the mountains. Wesley paused on the porch, gazing over the gentle slopes of his land. Jessica came up behind him, arms wrapped around his waist. He could hear Dylan and Brittany arguing playfully in the car about who got the window seat. "You ready?" Jessica asked, resting her chin on his shoulder. He closed his eyes briefly, heart full. "More than ready," he murmured. "I never imagined I'd get a second chance at happiness." He turned, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for taking this leap with me." She smiled, eyes shining. "I'm grateful too, Wesley. We've come a long way." They walked hand in hand to the waiting car. Dylan and Brittany cheered as they climbed in, excitement for the adventure ahead. The engine hummed to life, and the vehicle pulled away from the house, disappearing down the winding road. Somewhere behind them, in another part of town, Abby stood at her apartment window, watching the sunlight fade. A quiet resignation filled her. She knew Wesley had moved on. Yet an odd sense of peace settled in. She had her own journey of redemption, and perhaps in time, she'd find a path free of her mother's toxic grip. Aurora's downfall served as a stark reminder of choices, consequences, and the price of betrayal. For Wesley and Jessica, the open highway beckoned. The storm of heartbreak and deception had passed. In its wake lay a promise of calmer skies, a fresh, hopeful horizon for a patched-together family choosing love and honesty. And as the summer wind rustled the fields, Wesley felt certain that this time he'd found the peaceful future he'd once believed lost forever.